Telemark is one of the most famous Second World War films based on the real-life heroic efforts of a team of Norwegian resistance fighters who blew up a German heavy water plant being used by Hitler to develop atomic weapons. But long before the resistance took over the mission, Churchill personally authorized a daring raid on the plant. It was the very first operation to use assault gliders.
The heavy water plant was hidden away in the treacherous mountain fjords of southern Norway. On the night the gliders set off, it was snowing heavily and visibility was poor. Both aircraft were unable to hit the target, crashing into the mountainside, and Operation Freshman ended in tragedy.
For over 60 years, the crash sites have lain almost untouched. But last year, a local military historian pinpointed the likely location of one of the Op Freshman gliders. He contacted a Norwegian-based RAF team, and together they've mounted an expedition to recover the lost artifacts of glider DP349.
I'm trying to imagine what it would be like in a night in November in 1942, where we know, for example, the tow rope of the glider iced up, where it would come crashing out of the sky into, you can see the area here, we're surrounded by rocks, by small trees, for example. This is not a glider landing strip at all.
The pilots of DP349 died instantly from the impact of the crash, but a number of the Royal Engineers on board survived, although some were very badly injured.
My father and his parents was living here. They was living in that house, and they woke up in the night from the knocking on the window, and they saw two men, and they was screaming one word. It was doctor, doctor, doctor.
The people living in the small, isolated community at Fyljesdalen, where the glider crashed, had very little in the way of medical supplies and only limited English to communicate with the soldiers. Birger Kolleli is the only surviving member of the party which carried the bodies of the dead soldiers down from the mountain.
We know early that it was a special flight. I was only 20 years. I think it was the first time I saw so many people dead, and so not only dead, but dead on a very hard, what I can say.
The experience has left a deep scar on the local community, and they're very supportive of the expedition team and the crash site excavation. For relatives back in the UK, like Jean McLean, whose uncle Peter Doig was the co-pilot of DP349, the expedition is equally important.
That particular mission was the first glider pilot assault, and Peter and Malcolm Strathdy were the first glider pilots lost in any mission. And I think the fact that there is still wreckage there, it's really fitting, I think, that it's brought back. Whatever's there is brought back for the museum, for everyone to see and to remember.
The team plans to donate whatever they find at the site to the Glider Museum at RAF Shawbury, where the exhibits will ensure that the memory of all those who died on Op Freshman will live on. Fyljesdalen, BFBS reports, Norway.
And from the sacrifices made in the Great War to those made in World War II. A small team of Norwegian-based British airmen and their local guide are investigating the crash site of one of two RAF gliders which came down during an unsuccessful mission to take out the German-held heavy water plant, which was made famous by the film The Heroes of Telemark. Sadly, those who weren't killed by the crash were caught and shot by the Germans. And as a tribute to their bravery, the present-day RAF team are keen to preserve whatever they can find at the site.
With the passing of over 60 years since the crash, it's unlikely that much of the glider's wooden structure has survived. But the team are hoping to find significant metal pieces from the aircraft, which they'll donate to the Glider Museum at RAF Shawbury for safekeeping.
We're reasonably confident that we're going to find bits that are either significant or are large, or both. And we've got a lot of technical drawings that allow us to fairly quickly and fairly accurately, I think, place the various bits that we're going to find on the aircraft.
And it seems they're in luck. Minutes after the team switch on their metal detector, there are encouraging beeps, and it doesn't take long before pieces of the lost glider start to emerge from the hillside.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, you can see that you can just about make out there's like a U shape there, and there's a bit in the middle there. There's a plate going through, and there's a nut and bolt going through the middle. So it's almost certainly part of the control runs in the wings, I think.
Although the bodies of those who died at the scene have since been reburied, the small Fyljesdalen community have preserved the original gravesite. And to the team's amazement, they've also kept safe some key pieces of the glider's bodywork, which they want to donate to the expedition.
It was only when we got down to the shed and they started pulling bits of plywood from behind corrugated iron. It's absolutely staggering. There's 9 or 10 sections of plywood, still with the original covering on, still with the camouflage on. You can still see part of the roundels on one of them. There's writing on them. It's just unbelievable. That's been preserved over this time.
As well as the excitement of uncovering so much of the wreckage, working on the dig has been a moving experience for the airmen.
You know how big the actual aircraft is, and when you find the parts spread about so much, it makes you think how horrible it must have been on that night for when the crash actually took place.
Some of the most touching finds have been the personal items, probably belonging to the soldiers who died in the crash.
And to find a buckle and things like that you know had belonged to a piece of webbing, a piece of kit, that somebody had actually tied for the last time that night that the aircraft crashed. So it was exciting, but at the same time, underlying all that is the emotion that here is where people met their end.
Thanks to the hard work of the expedition team and the support of the local community, the crash site dig has yielded over 300 different artefacts from glider DP349. And an impressive display can now be put together as a permanent tribute to the bravery of the men who gave their lives on Operation Freshman. Fyljesdalen, BFBS reports, Norway.